Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well. I wanted to share some thoughts today about sleep, and this is for the insomniacs out there. If you've been having trouble sleeping lately, I know a lot of people have. The energies that we're in at the minute are particularly intense, and they seem to be messing with a lot of our sleep patterns. I know I've had some trouble recently, whether it's getting to sleep or staying asleep, or waking up in the middle of the night and then not being able to get back to sleep. Like there's a lot of weird stuff that's been going on. And it's really easy to get stuck in a knot with that. And I thought I'd share some stuff that I've found helpful over the years, especially with my background of helping people with chronic fatigue. One of the things that I think really gets people with sleep is the meaning they make out of it when they don't sleep. So if they don't sleep, they start making up all kinds of stories about what it means and why it's important for them to get some sleep. And of course, the more they make up those stories and the more concerned they get about whether they're sleeping or not, the less likely they are to sleep, because now they're revving themselves up about whether they're sleeping or not. And I think it's really important to realize that actually the body sleeps when we're not trying to sleep. So if you look at how people go to sleep, it's not because they go to sleep and they do sleep. It's actually a surrendering, it's a letting go, it's a dropping of the doing that allows us to go to sleep. And so much of what is actually keeping people up is when they've made a concern about how much sleep they're getting, they now turn it into a doing, and they start making up, sleep routines, and I've got to do this at this time and eat this and take that. And I'm not necessarily saying those things are bad, but the energy behind those actions really matters. So if you're doing it from a place of fear or concern about how much you're sleeping, you're going to get in a knot. And I had that myself when I was in the early stages of my sort of chronic fatigue journey, and I was actually on sleeping tablets for a period. And I came off them, and then I had rebound insomnia and I couldn't sleep. And I got really, really in a knot about it. And I remember somebody that I was working with at the time just said to me, well, the body will sleep when it needs to, you know? And I heard something in that because it reminded me that there was an intelligence to my body. It reminded me that my body would find homeostasis on its own. And the more I looked towards that, the less concerned I was about whether I was sleeping or not. And eventually my sleep routine just normalized all on its own because I'd taken away that concern. Now, part of the problem that people have, and one of the things that keeps the concern in place, is the fact that we go, well, I've got to sleep in order to have energy the next day. Is that really true? I don't know. Maybe there's some truth to it, but my experience tells me that actually the body has a mode of rest and digest, right? That actually it's in when we're not resisting our scenarios and our situations and whether or not we're sleeping, right? And that's operating even during the daytime, even when we're awake. And so what I found for myself is that actually the less I got concerned about whether I was sleeping or not, I would still have energy the next day. Now, I may not feel fabulous, right? But the energy was there, even if I hadn't slept. And what I make of that is I used to talk to chronic fatigue clients about the difference between tiredness and energy. And what I would find was that the more concerned I got about whether I was getting sleep, and the concern was coming from whether I was going to have energy the next day, well, the next day, if I hadn't slept, I'd now be worrying about whether I was going to have enough energy because I hadn't slept. And that process of worrying is actually an expending of energy. So you would start to create this sort of self-fulfilling prophecy where you're concerned about the fact that you'd not slept and not, worry about not having energy the next day would then cause you to worry and create this self-fulfilling prophecy where you'd feel really lacking energy. And I remember seeing this when we had our first child, Max, who's now 16, and he didn't sleep at all. And I remember sort of, because I was so distracted just trying to look after him, he didn't sleep at all. And as a result, we didn't sleep. But because he didn't sleep at all, and when we had to just get on with looking after him, in the morning the next day, because I didn't have time to think about whether I'd slept or whether I had the energy. I was shocked at just how much I was capable of. Um, so, there's a difference between tiredness and energy, but if you confuse the two, you can start really worrying when you've not slept. And that process of worrying the next day can actually start to drain your energy. Um, I remember another example I had, when I used to, don't do it so much these days, but when I used to do long haul travel, I originally used to get really worried about having jet lag. And then at some point, I started to connect the dots between what I've just shared with you now and what would happen to me when I would change time zone. And of course, my sleep was all over the place in the beginning when I would travel somewhere. My circadian rhythms would be in a mess. And what I would find was if I got really worried about the fact that I'd not sleep, boy, oh boy, did I suffer the next day. But if I was just like, okay, the body will sort this out, I don't need to be so concerned about this. Again, I noticed maybe I felt a bit tired the next morning, but I have the energy. And over time, the jet lag would sort itself out and, the body would normalize. So there's a need to remember that we live in this system that is controlled by a deeper intelligence. And the more concern we get in our mind about what this intelligence is doing, the more we actually start to get in the way of that by virtue of the fact that we rev up our fight or flight response. So if you're having some trouble sleeping right now, what if you don't need to worry too much about that? I'm obviously not saying don't go and see a doctor if you've got symptoms and all of that sort of stuff. Absolutely, you should check those sort of things out. But actually, what I notice is it's the concern over the amount of sleep we get that then starts to cause us not only to sleep less, but actually starts to result in us draining our energy as a result of how concerned we get about it. So what if you can just trust that there's an intelligence there that knows what it's doing? And if you don't sleep well, or you having trouble in the middle of the night, what if you could just use that as an opportunity to just be, or go and watch something, or go and read a book or something like that, and just take the concern away from it and trust that this system that you live in knows what it's doing. Anyway, just some thoughts. I thought you might find that helpful. Anyway, sending lots of love. Take care. Bye.